So this is the keynote session of the 12th edition of the Bengal Chamber's Business IT Conclave. This year's theme is Reimagining the Future, Building Nation with Technology. Our keynote speaker is Mr. Mahadeva Matmani, Partner Strategy and part of PwC Network. He is joining us from Netherlands. He will be in conversation with Mr. Dev E. Mukherjee, President of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry. With this, I would request Mr. Mukherjee to please take forward the session.
Thank you very much, Angana. And it's indeed, well, I see a blank screen in front of me. I hope I'm visible and audible to everyone.
You're perfect.
Thank you.
I think we've lost Dave.
I think so. I think his network. Sorry for the technical glitch. So I think we have lost due to connectivity Mr. Dev Mukherjee. So welcome Mr. Mahadev Matmani, Partner Strategy and from PwC's Network Netherlands, and he will be addressing us on creation of value digital strategy. Mr. Matt.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As Angana said, partner with Strategy and based in the Netherlands, and I wear, among the many hats that I wear, I think most relevant to this is one that I lead our global transformation platform business. I've been working with companies across industries for the last 26 years on business model transformation, and maybe even more relevant to this conversation is for the last 2 to 2.5 years, I've been collaborating with another colleague of mine and with the Harvard Business Review on really studying and looking at what it is that companies that succeed with quote unquote digital transformation, what is it that they do, what works well, but also those that haven't succeeded, what are the issues? And so what I thought I would do today in our discussion is to share with you a few of the insights from that body of work and from those practical experiences, and then hopefully be able to engage in a valuable discussion and perhaps address any questions or comments you may have. So with that said, let me just start off by saying that there's a lot that is in the public domain around digital transformation. And it has been bandied about already for the last number of years as the next greatest thing, the most important thing. There are many consulting firms just like mine who are out there saying, oh, you need to have a strategy around digital transformation, and that's fundamental to value creation in the future. And of course, then along with that comes the push to invest in lots of technologies, and all sorts of abbreviations and acronyms get thrown around: cloud, AI, big data, blockchain, so on and so forth. And you're assaulted sort of on a daily basis by various consulting firms and coming to you saying, you must invest in this, that, or the other. Now, what's interesting though is in this body of work and this research and so forth, what we've actually discovered is that digital transformation really has nothing to do with digitization or even going digital. And what I mean by that is that what you see is companies that have succeeded with using technology, to integrating technology into their value chains and finding ways to really create new value or incremental value using technology, have done so not through adding more digital initiatives and just sort of applying technology to improve what they already do today incrementally here or there. Of course, that's a fine thing to do, and there's nothing wrong with, say, using technology to automate a manual process that you may have and so forth. However, what the overwhelming evidence shows is that those individual digital initiatives often don't pay off. And in many companies, and I'm sure this may be familiar to perhaps all of you, and certainly I encounter companies like this on a daily basis that have all sorts of digital initiatives. They have pilots, there's all this sort of language thrown out about fail fast. You have to be agile, you have to fail fast, and let's have a robotics pilot, and let's do this pilot and that pilot. And there are all kinds of digital initiatives typically all over a company. But what you find is that most of those initiatives do not add up to much. They don't really add up to much in terms of the either the benefits that they deliver, and certainly, over a period of time. Often when you look back and you see the original business cases against which those initiatives were approved, they often don't tend to deliver on those business cases. Most notorious amongst these are obviously large ERP upgrade programs often take longer, they run over budget, etc. And ultimately, they never really fulfill upon the original business case that was certainly intended. And when you look underneath, why is that the case? It tends to be that these digital initiatives have been started out, well-intentioned certainly, but have been started out with more of a focus on sort of maybe solving a point issue or trying to digitize a particular part of the existing business, without actually stepping back to think about what should my business be and how will I create value in the future. And what I mean by that is when you look at companies that have really fundamentally succeeded with transforming their business model and really applying digital in a way that helps them grow, both grow in terms of revenue, in terms of market share, in terms of capitalization, valuation, so on and so forth, what you find that they've done is, rather than just digitizing their existing businesses, adding lots of digital initiatives, they've taken a step back to relook at how will we actually create value in the future? And indeed, how will value be measured? And specifically within that, there's the growing realization that the way you think about value creation for a company is no longer just financial value creation. It has to be multidimensional. And you have to measure that value based on, yes, financial value certainly, but also environmental impact, social impact, the way that you build trust in society and work with regulatory bodies. And how do all those things actually contribute to your overall value creation? And when you look at it from that lens, you then start to recognize that the way you can start to apply digital, therefore, to impact that value outcome might be quite different from just digitizing what you do today. And then therefore the business cases for what you might, for the digital investments you make, look a bit different. So for example, that could, and I'll give you just one example. One of the companies that we've studied and profiled is Philips, or Royal Philips, which I think in India is most well known as a lighting company. But that is in fact a part of their business that they've divested. They used to be a multi-industry conglomerate operating in healthcare, lighting, and consumer electronics sectors. And they've since divested the lighting business. They've just divested the last of their consumer businesses, and they've really refocused themselves as what they now call a health technology company. But the way they've reimagined their future, recognizing how value will be built, created differently in the future, is shifting from being a healthcare device manufacturer and engineering hardware-centric company to really recognizing that the ultimate value they have to create is to help people be well, to lead healthy lifestyles. And that may require actually not just delivering hardware, it may require delivering services. It may require using technology and data so that while they may also produce a great MRI machine or a CT scan machine that gives you a very good image of your heart, Along with that comes a data platform and an analytics platform that can immediately analyze the image that has been taken of your heart, detect based on a micro population of people. So if you're a South Asian male between the age of 40 to 65, unfortunately, the data shows we are at high risk of heart disease. And so the platform that they now sell includes the service that can diagnose also the potential risks that you may have and make treatment recommendations as well as to the medicines that may be available, the kind of lifestyle you can follow, the diet you can do, the clinical trials that may be available, all sorts of things that the doctor or clinician you're working with can then use to advise you to better manage your health. And then they also offer, along with that, a range of services that may help you manage your health after you've had your hospital visit and so forth. Now, that's just one example of a company that's really looked at how do we use digitization to really reimagine the way in which we create value and generate not only new revenue but a bigger impact. And so with that in mind, the way they've then thought about digital investments has, yes, of course, like many other companies, they've had lots of internal initiatives to automate and digitize their existing processes, but they've really focused also on the front line and bringing digital into their value proposition. So how do they expand the solution services value that they offer to customers? How do they generate new revenue? How do they generate new business models? From using digital in a thoughtful manner, and at the same time also doing that still with applying the conventional wisdom of fail fast and experiment and be agile and so forth, meaning they haven't necessarily created these new business models based on huge investments over multiple years on giant technology platforms, but by being clear about how to create value in the future, they've therefore been able to work in fast sprints to say, let's apply digital to solve a specific client issue in a way that actually helps us very quickly analyze, does it deliver value to the client? Can we generate money from it? Are they willing to pay for it? And if they are, great, then we scale it. If not, then we move on. So that's just one example. There are several others that I could share with you, but what I thought I would do, to frame the discussion is to really bring back the point that as you think about digital transformation, please, my plea to you is to see that more as business transformation, not so much as something related to technology, but for digital transformation to be successful, I think it's important to start from really looking at how will value be measured? How will it be created? Therefore, how should we create value in the future? And then how do we therefore use technology and prioritize it, apply it in the right areas of our value chain so that we can build that kind of future value we want to as we move ahead. I'll pause there. I'm happy to sort of get into any further details and aspects of that, but let me just pause here and see perhaps if there's any thoughts or challenges or questions.
Right, Matt. Sorry, for some reason, technical glitches, I suppose, I went out of the system, so I lost you for the better part of your initial observations. Just a quick point. I know you talked about the business value chain in terms of how would you define value in terms of, because normally I would think typical business value would look at shareholder value or customer value. But in today's context, I think the definition of business value becomes more expansive and possibly takes into account stakeholders and every stakeholder that gets impacted by business or is impacted upon. So in terms of the expansive, if we have an expansive definition of value, how does digital technology or digital strategy in this case shape business value in today's context, especially since we see such huge disruptions happening, pandemic, post-pandemic, whatever.
Yeah, really, that might have been the part of my comments that you missed, Dave, because in fact, no, but it's a great question, and I'm really, really so glad that you asked that, because indeed, I think that is what we see in companies that have really succeeded with quote unquote digital transformation, is that their starting point is the recognition that the way you think about value has to be bigger than just financial value or shareholder value. And so that includes looking at environmental impact, for example, not from just a purely altruistic mindset of saying, well, we should do good to the planet, which is a fine thing to do. And it's certainly good, if you have that point of view, but looking at, well, look, by doing so, actually, how does that allow us to create value also as measured financially, but also how does that allow us to create broader social value by looking at things like how do we treat our employees and our stakeholders, and how do we measure that value? And the good thing is, I think while in the past, some of these objectives might have been a little bit more intangible, they weren't really measures, you didn't have to report on them. I mean, that is, of course, all evolving in our society today, right? There are so many measures now for environmental and sustainability impact. There are very specific ways in which you can actually bring that even into your equity story and sell it to the analysts or the banks or so forth, so that they're willing to fund you. In fact, in Europe now, banks are no longer, and many private equity firms certainly, they will not invest in a business, they will not give you a loan unless you can very clearly enunciate your environmental impact value, because they're of course concerned with investing in a business that they feel may not have future potential because of impacts to both the environment and society. So I do think it's important, as you think about value creation, to look at a more holistic definition that includes financial, environmental, social, as well as sort of the trust impact that you have. And that comes into things like, how do you use data, for example? And are you using data in a responsible way, in a way that's transparent? You have a proper policy around it, you have proper privacy around it, etc. Because that will indeed impact your ability. It may seem wonderful right now, for example, to use a lot of private data and personal data to sell new services or influence a consumer to buy your products. But then using that in a responsible way, providing transparency and the right governance around it, actually has your longer term valuation impact. So I think, thinking of these considerations is important, because it then allows you to make smart choices about where you invest in digital and how you invest in digital in a way that, and the challenge with, of course, technology is any investment you make now always has the risk that it's obsolete in 6 to 9 months, right? So having that broader definition of value really helps you make the right choices and the bets on investment, making them the right areas of your value chain, and make sure that you're doing it in a way that actually contributes to that broader value and not just the sort of short-term financial impact.
Right.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, that's what I thought initially we would talk about, but it's good that you addressed that. You mentioned about data, and you did talk about, insights, because the digital technology allows you to get insights from whether it's the market dynamics or customer expectations, whatever. But in a way, large corporations like the Amazons of this world, who built their own platforms and use data for digital marketing, restrict, in a way, competition. And does that create, does it really have a level playing field for others to use the platform? Do you see a little bit of disconnect, or do you see certain monopolistic tendencies in that, irresponsibility? Maybe it's slightly digressing from the core issue, but value in its expansive form, I think, should address this point as well. So in summary, the point on competition and the point on data privacy.
Yeah, indeed. So look, I think, in just a couple of years ago, maybe even last year, the sort of conventional thinking, whenever you talk about sort of digital business models, everyone sort of points to Amazon and Uber and Alibaba and companies and says, oh, that's the model to emulate. And, we all want to become a platform business. And consultants like me have made a lot of money, selling that to clients. Oh, you should go become a platform business. What you find, though, is two things. One, to succeed in being a platform business, you have to keep adding and creating more complexity so that it actually precludes others from, and it indeed, as you say, it ends up becoming oligopolistic or monopolistic in some way, so that you can keep people attached to your platform and preclude others from being able to make the kind of sheer investment that's required to get there. But number two, what you also see is that in order to succeed, certainly in today's world with the sort of speed of technology advance, but also with all the other things coming at us, pandemic, environmental impact, etc., you cannot do that, stand by yourself. You have to do it through ecosystems, through partnerships, and in many cases, in fact, being willing to collaborate with your competitors. So one just quick example is Komatsu, which is a Japanese company that has traditionally been in the machinery business, and they make diggers and earth movers and so on and so forth, construction equipment essentially, and they have made available a data platform that has lots of data from their construction sites as well as their machines, and they've made all of that data available to their competition on an open source platform, because they've recognized that actually to serve the ultimate need of their consumer, which are construction companies, you actually need to be able to integrate data from other manufacturers and so forth, and you actually have to collaborate. And then therefore, you need to do that in a trusted way. If you're going to ask other companies to share their data and share your data with them, of course, you have to ensure privacy. You have to have all the right security controls and so forth around it. And they've actually generated a new revenue stream from that business, so that even during the pandemic, when, of course, construction crews were stopped everywhere, no one was buying the equipment, they actually had new growth coming out because they were able to sell data, services, and solutions on existing equipment that they had. So I do think that this is, something that we have to bring into our thinking, that, look, it's not the old model of, in order to succeed, I need to own all the assets and I need to dominate. I do think we need to think more in the form of capabilities and scaling capabilities, as opposed to scale in assets. Now, that's a bit of a roundabout way, because I don't want to make a comment on whether it's ethical or not for these businesses to do what they're doing. But I do think that and certainly we're seeing this in the United States right now, that from a regulatory perspective, even this type of behavior is going to come under threat and be challenged. And I'm not sure that it's a sustainable business model to try to dominate everything by yourself.
Absolutely, because I remember Arnob in his initial remarks, when he introduced the minister in the earlier session, talked about trust and sustained outcomes as, but as another question, taking from the commitment on ESG, as we say, environmental concerns, social welfare, there is a counter thinking that's there, that there's too much, or rather overcommitment in terms of investment or owning ESG assets. I was reading somewhere very recently about $3 trillion of shareholder funds are being invested in ESG assets. So that dents into your profitability of the stakeholder return, the shareholder return. So do you think there is any justification in that? Are we overdoing it in terms of the reporting?
Well, I don't know.
Have we lost the balance, Matt? The point is, have we lost the balance? Are we now sort of the other end of the pendulum, so to speak, swinging to the other end?
Well, in my own personal view, and perhaps I will admit this is biased from living in the European Union, but I think my and I would even say our view, not just my view, our view as an institution, as a firm, is no, we're not, and in fact, we actually are making up for lost ground. So in our view, I don't think it is sort of, overreacting to this. Yes, it may feel a bit that way because we've gone from 0 to at least 60 fairly quickly. But indeed, it is something that we think it's a positive development in terms of the reporting requirements, because it then does allow us to frame this understanding of value as broader than just financial value for a particular shareholder or a group of shareholders. And once you start to bring the market into that thinking, and we already see that with several companies, it does impact even the way analysts value your financially, right? And how they think about the return profile of a business and so forth. So I think I would say, I don't think where the pendulum has swung too far. That said, I do think businesses from a strategy perspective have to make thoughtful choices about how far out and how quickly they go on that ESG spectrum. So, in some cases, for example, the technology is simply not there for clean energy, let's say. And so, it's of course, it's risky to make big bets and big investments at the moment. But therefore, I think we need eyes wide open choices on E, S, and G, each of those dimensions, eyes wide open choices and a strategy around how do we position ourselves to at least shape the direction, and when the technology gets there, to be ready to take advantage of it. I think the sort of old model of saying, well, let's wait and see, and maybe, I don't know, some innovator will figure this out, and then once they do, we'll get to it. That doesn't work anymore, and that actually leaves you at risk of destroying value even in the short term.
Thank you very much, Matt, and thank you for sharing your insights. And I wish we could have had some more time. I'm conscious that we have to sign off at 4 o'clock, our time, India time. So again, thank you very much, and apologies for having gone out of the network at the beginning of our discussion, of our conversation. But indeed a pleasure, and thank you very much for sparing your time with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Very, very happy to do so. I don't think you know this, but I'm actually a Calcutta boy myself, so very
wonderful.
Much a pleasure to be able to contribute.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Hope to see you physically in Calcutta, maybe sometime in the near or distant future.
Indeed. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mr. Dev Mukherjee. We would now request Mr. Chiranjeev Bhattacharya, co-chairperson of the IT Committee of the Bengal Chamber and CEO and Director of Visatech Informatics Private Limited, to take the session forward on digital transformation.